And with that, I get to welcome you to the Bill Highway Mariner monthly series on all things chapters and components. We look at components from every side and shape, who we are. Just in case we've got some new folks on, I'd love to make sure you introduce to Bill Highway. That's your tech tool answer, and Mariner, that's your leadership development training and looking at new structures answer. So Bill Highway and Mariner, we have been with you all helping to build and nurture this incredible community of sharing. And it's really a way that we believe in helping all of us have more successful components or chapters, sections, affiliates, whatever you call those. Now, super exciting news. A little bit of an update on this, as a matter of fact. March 27th is going to be a great webinar talking about sparking joy, not burnout. How do we help our volunteers find more satisfaction? This is really about you helping the volunteers you work with directly and helping the volunteers you work with their own volunteers at the component level. So that's going to be in March. We're teeing that up because, of course, National Volunteer Week is the next month. And then, of course, April, I am super excited to tell you that we're going to be focusing on how do you create that national chapter partnership for membership growth. And we've got Elizabeth Engel coming in. She's got some great stuff. All of that will lead us into CEX 2024. Registration will be opening this week. Super excited. We'll be at the ADA Conference Center in Chicago on Tuesday, May 7th, for those of you on that part of the land. But feel free to fly in or dial in on May 10th. We'll be at the AGU Conference Center. For those of you who joined us last year, I think there was about 75, I guess, total, who joined us. You know that is a fabulous home for our wonderful CEX program. New this year, we're going to have two deep dives. A deep dive in Chicago will be on helping chapters embrace non-dues revenue, and the deep dive in DC will be on chapter national partnerships for member retention, growth, and engagement. So deep dive. So pick the deep dive. You've got more than one person on your team. Send one to Chicago, one to DC. Just glam onto all the cool intel. The mornings we'll start talking about new structures. How do we look at chapters and components differently? Enough about that. Just want to do that. My final push about Bill Highway and Mariner before we bring on the fabulous and incredible Sheri Singer. You know, Bill Highway's got out these 3 success stories. So if you've been trying to have conversations internally about how tech can really support the system, you now have a couple of success stories you can look at, you can read, talk to Sarah, go ahead and do that. Yes, the Chicago program is only available in person. So the hybrid portion is only on the 10th on Friday. And finally, just let you know that you can always contact either Bill Highway or Mariner for a 15-minute chat. And if I was going to be honest, I always let it go a little bit longer because I love sharing what I have learned. Anyway, let's get right to today's conversation. Sheri Singer has worked with, it says here more than 100, hundreds of associations. And really, we've had a great conversation just leading into here. She helps people approach PR, marketing, and communication challenges. Beyond being a Gold Circle award-winning pro, she has been intricately involved in all levels of volunteering in ASAE's components, which means that she really understands the conversation that we're about to have in terms of how do you help your own components create incredible ambassadors to drive member engagement and member growth. I'm going to stop my share. I'm going to invite Sheri to put up her slide deck, and let's get this conversation going. It's so exciting to have you here, Sheri.
I'm so glad to be here, and I love your energy. I just did a media training session yesterday for a client, and they were like super quiet. I was like, this is not my normal ASAE kind of group, right? We're all talking, we're all chatting on chat. And I encourage you to put any questions that you might have that come up during the session into the chat. And let's get started. So this is me. Peggy gave me a great introduction. I've served on ASAE committees. Right now, I'm the vice chair of ASAE's Research Foundation Development Committee. And yes, I am the one that approaches you and asks you to give to the foundation. So when you see me coming, run the other way. I've served ASAE for 10 years as a leader. And I'm also the founder and organizer of Association Exchange. And Peggy, you're going to be speaking at Association Exchange in a couple weeks, right? So we're doing a quid pro quo, a win-win for everybody in our audiences by me speaking with you and then you speaking with us, and it's all good. I'm coming today to you from my couch because I feel like this is a program that everybody should embrace and be part of, and I want to keep it low key. And again, I encourage you, if you have any questions as we go through this, please put them in the chat. And what are we going to talk about today? First of all, we're going to talk about how an ambassador program is really part of your chapter's brand and how the program enhances chapter membership engagement and the value of membership. Everybody, when I talk about this program, says, where do I start? And we are going to talk about how to recruit ambassadors, how to keep them engaged. We'll talk about message training and training the chapter ambassadors to deliver those messages effectively. And then how do you launch the program? And we'll end with some takeaways and some of those Q&As. So here's an exercise. Please put your answers in the chat. What do you hope to learn today? What are you hoping to walk away with? I will tell you, I've given this program for ASAE on a national basis. We had a couple hundred people on, and they were actually, the number one request I got was for an outline of an ambassador toolkit, which I'm happy to share with you as well. So Peggy, what are we seeing coming in?
Oh my gosh. As soon as you said that, I read that they wanted to have a template or a plan for the ambassador program. I love it. But I thought Carolyn's point here was getting members aligned on our brand and messaging, which I know that you're going to get into. And then, of course, tangible strategies. Now, here's an interesting question from Katie. How do you incentivize the programs? And then I guess Allison must already have one because she wants to know how she can grow and improve. So a number of people want to do the startups, but they're really, some of them are looking for, oh, I need to get this, I need to retool this or whatever. And then do you have, Stephen wonders, any evidence to help highlight how helpful an ambassador program can be? And that's part of the ROI, like how do I sell this to the folks up? Many of the other ideas are coming through are very similar. So I think about cashiers and measuring success came up again.
I want to be able to answer all of your questions. And I think the program that I have for you today will go through and answer a lot of them. However, I do want to talk about this ROI and this, how do you measure success? First of all, I want to encourage you, and I'll probably mention this again in the process. I want to encourage you, this really needs to be, aside from the initial recruitment of members, which is going to be your board, some of the people who are on your committees, etc. It's going to be peer-to-peer. So you need to almost get ambassadors for the ambassador program. And that's a really good way to try to grow it. It's not going to come from staff. And I'll get into that when I talk about process. So an ambassador program is really part of your chapter's brand. If you're looking at chapters and component relations as an extension of a national brand, you're basically carrying these messages into a more local area. And the ambassador program is part of your chapter brand. I use this because I like to talk about how we always think of a creative brief, which I think, how to use your logo, what colors to use, what typeface, etc. We know we're very familiar with that. That's actually part of our print or written brand, right? But ambassador program is really how to establish your verbal brand. And that's a brand that everybody's carrying around with them on a day-to-day basis. But I bet if you got your chapter officers together and you ask them one by one, and this is probably the next slide, you ask them one by one, define your association or define your chapter. They might all have a different viewpoint, a slightly different viewpoint. And what you want to be able to do with this branding is be able to have everybody talk from the same page. That's part of what this program does. Everyone is an ambassador, members, leaders, if you have staff, everybody is an ambassador. There's no exceptions to that rule. If you are a member, even if you're a member and you just pay dues and you don't do a whole lot more, you're still potentially an ambassador. And one of the things that this program can do, and it's so great when it does this, is it can identify some rising stars that maybe you never even knew existed in the past. I've launched some of these programs with some of my clients, and we've found these like hidden gems within your chapters and within even your national organizations. It makes sure that you are transferring consistent communications with your external audiences. This is a picture of the Texas state capitol, right? So this is where the Texas legislature meets. So if you're doing anything on the chapter level where you're talking to reporters or other external audiences like legislators, this helps make sure that your communications are consistent no matter who that you're talking with. And you're speaking with one chapter voice, and that's really important too. Basically, this is just between you and I as I sit on my couch. This is like the old Speakers Bureau on steroids, right? We're going to just expand the old Speakers Bureau. And it includes a wide range of chapter activities that you're all probably doing. And now we're going to just bring ambassadors in and make it even more successful. So let's do another quick exercise. And Peggy, I'll look to you to give me some of the answers. Why should your chapter launch an ambassador program? What do you think are the benefits to launching that program? We just mentioned a few of them. I'm looking for you guys to put on your thinking caps and maybe come up with a few other ideas.
Yeah, so help and expand your network, the diversity of your network, which I think is really important. And then, of course, community engagement to increase retention. And if Jessica mentions, make new members feel welcome and get connected. So, and then the other one that's jumping out at me here is members become invested in the organization.
Yeah, Peggy and I had a little bit of a discussion before we got on today, and it was interesting because the people join organizations to connect other people. I mean, it used to be back in the day that people joined for other reasons, maybe government relations they couldn't do on their own, or the chapters couldn't do, and they were doing it from a national level. But today it's networking, it's community, it's connecting. And this really does help expand your community.
One other one that I just saw here coming up, Sharon, it goes to the comment you made on the last slide, which is allows members to speak member to member, which is better than staff doing all of the speaking.
100%. And we already went over this slide, so I don't know. I knew I was going to bring it up later, but it came out already. Defining your chapter differently really muddies your verbal brand. And really, people are carrying around your verbal brand. It's not your logo and your colors and whatever. It's how people are describing your chapter and your organization. So it's very similar to other chapter branding elements. We all know when we look at this, we know it's Starbucks. You want people to be on the same page when they're describing your chapter. An ambassadors program is your chapter's verbal branding tool, and it allows you to describe your chapter consistently. And an ambassador program also helps establish your verbal brand. I'm sort of underscoring that because I think it's really important to know why we're doing this. Let's talk a little bit about chapter member engagement and value proposition. How do you think your chapter might benefit from an ambassador program? What do you think are the benefits to you? There's some obvious benefits, you know, talking to external audiences. You have a broader base of people that maybe can go out and do that. But are there other ways within your chapter that you think you might benefit?
As we're waiting for folks to kind of mull that over, Sheri, the one that comes to my mind right away is this idea of creating a closer tie between our chapter component and national. I think sometimes the biggest thing we have is the sense of we're separate. And even though we may be legally separate, I'm just listening to you, in the minds of our members, it's a verbal brand. But we
Yes.
also have here modeling connection examples they can replicate, onboarding and member journeying, onboarding new members, leadership pipeline. Ooh, that's a good one.
That's a great
And
one.
then also, Mike's been listening to our other programs, micro volunteer opportunity to build the leadership pipeline. Now I always appreciate when our guys and gals bring something up and says it's a double edge, helping with members' investment, building a pipeline, but also you're still going to have to grapple or worry about sustainability and keeping the program energized. So it's not letting the program, it sounds like a great thing, but it can also get stale. And Sheri, we did have one person earlier say, well, we flopped when we first did this. That wasn't another example. And then Carrie wonders if there is an opportunity for this to tie into sponsorships and other corporate investment in the chapter.
There is, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but I did also want to talk about this peer-to-peer engagement. One way to keep people engaged year after year is to offer them the message training in a different way on an annual basis, because that really helps not only bring in new ambassadors, but also helps kind of retrain people and kind of re-energize them. So you know how when you attend a training, you get really excited about something, you go back to your office, you're all excited, and then all the daily tasks come in between you and actually doing something a lot of times. But if you're offering this on an annual basis, it offers you an opportunity to re-inject that community with some excitement for the program. So let's talk about how the ambassador program benefits your chapter members. As somebody mentioned before and Peggy cited, it provides chapter micro volunteer opportunities and experiences. One of those, let me go back a second. One of those could be just posting something on social media. You know, not everybody is going to be well-versed as an ambassador to do a television interview or even a newspaper or outlet interview, or even a podcast. So these micro volunteer opportunities are super important to be able to keep those volunteers engaged and give everybody a place to be able to experience the ambassador program. And, you know, you always get those people. I remember when I was on staff with an association, you know, there's people where you kind of get their phone calls and you pick it up and you kind of roll your eyes. You're like, oh my gosh, they're calling again. And they're like, I signed up to be an ambassador and I haven't gotten to do anything. Those are great opportunities for someone to write a blurb for your e-newsletter, to post something on social media, you know, with your giving them something to post. Those are great micro opportunities. And there are probably other ones that I'm not thinking about. Feel free to put those in the chat as well. The ambassador program also provides you with skills for a journalist interview. Let's say a newspaper or any other kind of outlet, a trade press in your region wants to do a story about your industry or whatever, and they call you. And these people are now trained to be able to talk about your chapter with one voice. You don't have to really worry about them, you know, going astray. The other thing that you want to do when you're doing this kind of interview is I always prepare talking points or a tip sheet so that people have something in front of them. Most of these interviews are not television interviews. Most of them are done and even on TV now, they're doing a lot of interviews by Zoom. So you have an opportunity to have something in front of you, and I encourage you to do that. You also might be testifying before a state, regional, or local elected officials. And this again gives you an opportunity to talk about the organization and bridge that chapter national gap by conveying who the organization is, who it represents with one voice. You could present to related organization chapters. So every time when I talk about this, and way back in the day, when I worked for a big PR agency, I was like responsible, I was vice president for constituency relations. What the heck is that? It was actually bringing together corporations and associations so that they, you know, would have these volunteer opportunities. In other words, the corporation there was one organization that I worked with where the corporation was sponsoring the organization's press room during their annual conference. So it was these collaborations between private and associations. However, since I've been in the association community exclusively in the last 20 years, I have realized the value of associations that are related to your organization, not necessarily the ones that overlap your organizations, but the ones where your borders touch. That's an opportunity for you to present to an organization chapter because your borders are touching and you have some things in common. I will add the caveat that if you are competing for members, the other organization may not be as open as if your borders are touching. So just something to keep in mind. You could write a chapter blog, write an article, social media post. These are all opportunities for your ambassadors. They don't necessarily need to be front and center. And I know a lot of times when I do this, I don't think I put it in here, but if I did, excuse me, I usually put a slide in the big secret about the ambassador program. It's somebody, holding their finger up to their mouth, is everyone can be an ambassador. You don't turn anybody down. What you want to be able to do is use the right people in the right places. And your members will learn chapter leadership skills, and that creates 2 career skills, right? Leadership skills and career skills are kind of interwoven. Once you learn how to function as a leader in your chapter, you can take that to enhance your career as well. So here's how the ambassador program might benefit your chapter. First of all, no question about it, it expands your chapter's spokesperson. You have a much wider berth. It always scares me as a PR, marketing, communications person when I work with a client and they tell me, we already have spokespeople. Who are your spokespeople? Our board president and our CEO. Okay, that's 2 people. What happens if your board president and your CEO are at the same conference and the New York Times calls or your metropolitan newspaper calls and they want to do a big story about your chapter or about the industry and they're looking for somebody who can talk about it? If you only have those 2 people, you might miss that opportunity. So let's make sure that you are looking at this for its base root. Remember I said it's like the Speakers Bureau on steroids to expand your chapter programs. So how many of you have chapter members that look like this, right? A lot of my clients have chapter members that kind of look like this, and they're the ones that sit at the table and they're like, but we've always done it this way. Why do we need a new program, right? So it retrains some of these long-term chapter members to stay on message and to be brought up to date, even though it might be kicking and screaming with the chapter membership that you want, the messages you want them to convey. And that's a really important thing. That's also why I recommend that retraining every year, because it allows some of your long-term chapter members to get involved. And this is I know somebody asked about how do you keep the buzz going from the launch. It's always a tough thing, when a new program is launched, there's a lot of buzz about it and a lot of excitement. How do you keep that excitement going? That's your member to member, your peer to peer, oh, I did this and it was so exciting. And I was on this podcast as a guest and I, posted something on social media, or I wrote a blurb for your e-newsletter. You've got to have those key members, those cheerleaders that are helping you, year after year, retain that excitement about the program. It may ID, and we talked about this before, new active chapter members. Like somebody might say, I'm not interested in anything else but sort of being this chapter ambassador. That's a great role for someone, I think. And it assists in identifying chapter rising stars. I know I did this for the Snow and Ice Management Association a number of years ago. And we had, we trained maybe 10 people. It's a very small association. And when we trained those 10 people, 5 of them were like board, from the board or from committees or past chairs, but another 5 of them were rising stars. And some of those people were awesome in being able to retain the message and repeat it in their own way. And it was just an awesome experience. So I would aim to identify a lot of these rising stars. These are people who are sitting maybe on committees in your various chapter committees, but they're not chair of the committees. Maybe they just got out of school, but they do have a lot of enthusiasm for the industry and for the profession. These are great people to tap as ambassadors. And it may identify future chapter leaders. So these, future rising leaders may then become chapter leaders or maybe even national leaders. And it captures that chapter brand consistency among the members. So if you get somebody who's coming in the door and they're brand new, or you have an onboarding program, you know that you're going to include these key messages in this onboarding process, and that everyone who's saying, well, why should I join your chapter? they're getting the same message from all of the members. The message is really consistent. And most importantly, we look at this as down the road, but you're really telling your chapter story with these messages. And that's really what the compelling reason is for people to join and stay engaged in your chapter. What is your chapter story? What are you trying to do? And your chapter story on a local or regional level might be different than the national story. I know one of my biggest clients is a regional association, and they are affiliated. They have their own board and whatever, but they are affiliated with the national association. Their national association right now, in all honesty, is having a lot of problems. And while the chapter is bracing for some of these problems to filter down, we also are trying to get ahead of it by telling the regional organization's story. In fact, we're launching a video project next month that talks about the value of their membership. And we're doing that to get ahead of what the national organization is going through. So as much as you're sort of tied to that national story, you have a story that you can tell in and of yourself. This is always the hardest part. Where do I start? How do I get chapter buy-in? How do I start this thing, Sheri? People are always saying that. The optimals is to get buy-in at every chapter level. You want committee people, you want members, you want your board, if you have one, to be really excited about this. Doesn't always happen, but that's the idea. At a minimal, you have to get the chapter leaders on board. And I think by describing this program to them as a really exciting way, of getting new people engaged and involved and creating community, I think you can convince your leaders that this is a good thing. There's essentially, there might be a cost in terms of some staff time, but there's no outward cost to it. And then you want to go to the members. And again, I believe strongly this needs to be kind of peer-to-peer. Staff to members, that's not going to work in this particular project. It's just not. Unless you have a particularly strong relationship with a chapter member, maybe it would work then, but I still think it's better staff to member to member. And if you have chapter staff, the staff needs to kind of ferret this, through and make sure it happens. So who do you think you start with to get buy-in? What do you think in your chapter? Who do you think you need to start with to get buy-in? And Peggy, if people are putting their comments in, I see we have more than 100 comments. We're in the chat. There's 99 plus comments.
And we've got a couple of questions that have floated in. I'm holding on to them as you get to the content. I'll throw that out to you. But
okay, great.
Folks are coming in and they're saying chapter leaders, leadership, chapter chairs. And I'm going to suggest, I really appreciate seeing that slide about chapter staff. Many organizations have all volunteers, but there's a number of them. I saw Christy from AGC, for example, which are fully staffed affiliates. And so this sounds like someone, when you're launching it, you might, in some cases, go to your chapter staff, and in other cases, go to your chapter leader. But there was one other person, and I just saw something similar, who said, many of our chapters have a recruitment or an engagement or a welcome chair. One person says recruitment membership chair. That would be a natural place to begin the conversation. And then the last thing I see here is past officers.
Yes, I think, realistically, it's the board and the leadership, but you would be in a stronger position to get a past board chair of your chapter to come and deliver this, rather than if in fact you have staff, because I think, again, that peer-to-peer, they're going to have better buy-in, in my opinion, than if it's any kind of staff, if you have staff. And then following the chapter board, you get leaders and members and others. Really what you want to do is create a buzz about this. You don't need a lot of people to do it. That is a very misconceived idea. People think, oh, we can't do this. We only have 20 chapter members and we might only have 3 people to do this. 3 people is fine. And you don't need to tell anyone, because once it sort of rolls out and you get it going, you have all these tools that you present to them, people want to join. That's been my experience. So let's get into a little bit deeper with, how do you start with those chapter leaders? The first thing that I did when I built my very first one, and I did it for a medical association, I was trying to build an ambassador program so these women physicians could be ambassadors for women's health. And I started with chapter leaders, with the board. And I asked the board, I said, we're building this ambassador program, and I would love you to give me 1 or 2 people that you think would be great as ambassadors for our organization or our chapter, right? So you're asking the leaders, you're already getting buy-in because you're asking the leaders for their, valued opinion. You're already starting with a little bit of buy-in before you even really present the idea. Then I would go to my chapter committee chairs. Do you know anybody? And again, they might know somebody who's not even a member. You might even be able to pull them in to be a new member off of this program. So it just has such positivity all the way around for you as an individual building your careers, and also from your chapter building future leadership. Then draft an email from a chapter leader. It could be the board president. Maybe it's that same past president. I know that I was doing a project with another physician organization. We were trying to recruit people for their Capitol Hill Day. And we had double the number of people, by the way, using this. And physicians are terribly busy. So I know, that a lot of times people say, I'm too busy to do this. But if you give them the email, if you give them a phone script, and they get to call their friend and talk about their golf game or whatever for 10 minutes, and then they can talk about this, they might be more inclined to do it. But think outside the box. When I say chapter leader, immediately we always go to board president, but maybe it's not your board president. Maybe it's the founder, who has kind of been retired, but that would be a good person to have at your chapter level. Congratulations. You always start with the positive, right? So you don't want to start with, do you want to do this? We think this is a good program. No. You really want to be positive and really forthcoming. Start the buzz right from this email. Congratulations, you've been nominated or selected to be one of the founding members of our chapter ambassador program, right? That gives it a caveat already. And I think people are kind of excited when they hear that it's new and it's different and they're a founding member. Then promote the heck out of it. Wherever you can promote it, promote it. You want it on social media. You want people sending emails and forwarding those emails. You want it in your e-newsletter if you have one. You want, peer-to-peer. Did you hear about this new program that we're launching? How are you going to join and whatever? That's how you get the buzz going. And then offer that chapter ambassador training. And again, I don't care if you have 3 or 5 people, because this program, once it gets started, it tends to kind of roll forward on its own because people are excited about it. And then record it. So at least if you have new people coming in mid-year, like we're recording this one, you can offer them that program so they could listen to it and then have that training. And I am someone who really believes in annual training. And start your chapter ambassador list. I'm telling you, 3 people, you don't need more than that. The secret to ambassador recruitment is the peer-to-peer. And I feel very strongly about that. And how do you start creating messages? So this is another question that I get asked a lot. I consider myself the message guru. So I could go on and talk about this, and I have, in a whole session on messaging for associations. And a lot of times when I ask associations, whether it's a chapter level or even the national level, do you have messaging? And they're like, no, we don't have messaging. Why do we need that? Because if you line all your chairs up and you ask them about the association, they'll all describe it in a different way. And you want to make sure that they're on the same message. So does your chapter have messaging or talking points? Do you have a document? Just yes or no in the chat real quick. Peggy, let me know who's coming in and what the answers are.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me see. It's coming in fast. And there we go. Initially I got a bunch of yeses. Now I've got not currently. I really love someone that says not currently. No. Let
me tell you one thing. If you have chapter messaging or talking points that were developed pre-COVID, just a few years ago, you need to scrap them and go back. And, your founding date is not going to change in your messaging, but some of the things that your organization does and offers may have changed. And you probably need to take a good hard look at that messaging and really think about whether it's going to resonate with the members that you have currently or the members you want in the future. I see you're trying to say something, Peggy. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, because I just saw something pop up, and it's coming in from Matt. I know Matt well, and I love the question. Or not the question, the statement really. He says, yeah, we got that for recruitment and retention. So for just a moment, Sheri, recruitment and retention is a thing that comes to our mind when we think about messaging, but you're thinking about messaging that may go broader than just this conversation around membership.
Yes, it's branding. It's what is the purpose of your chapter association? What is the purpose? Why do you exist? I like to take this from Simon Sinek, and he's like a famous why guy. He wrote a whole book on why. And really, to start creating your messages, you need, why do we exist? What need do we fill as a chapter? And maybe you need to extend it a little bit further, you know, as a national organization. What do we offer our members? And to start writing these messages, this is exactly, Peggy, I'm glad this question came up because now it makes more sense to the people listening. To start, you're going to look at your chapter mission, the values, what's on your website landing page, maybe a news release, the paragraph at the end of the news release. You know, ABC chapter does blah, blah, blah. We were founded in blah, blah, blah. We have blah, blah, blah members. Even that paragraph is a place to start with messaging. And there are two kinds of messages. There's key chapter messaging, which really describes the why of your organization and maybe even your profession. And then there are overarching, they explain the purpose and why. They're broad, they're not specific, and they can be used alone as standalone sentences, or they can be linked together as like a whole description of what your organization does.
Sheri, let me interrupt for just a minute because the comment was made that our why is different for our different types of members. And I think that that's getting at a different level of why.
Yeah, I'm talking about the big why. Let's say you're an oncology, I'm just using this as an example. You're an oncology organization, right? Oncology physicians. Our goal is to help our patients through the cancer journey and to eradicate cancer as quickly as we can in the future. That's a really big overarching goal for the organization, right? That's kind of where you start. It's your mission, your purpose, your value. You have to kind of think, it's almost visionary. You have to kind of think like, go back and ask yourself, why does this organization exist? And when you go to the real root of why the organization exists, then, and it could be spelled out already in your mission. You know, that's another really good place to, or some people have core values, or they have beliefs I've seen on websites. All of those is what you should use to form these chapter messages. Now we're going to talk about sub messages. That's why somebody would join a chapter, what the chapter has to offer them. Oh, we do an annual meeting. Our chapter does an annual meeting. We have a chapter e-newsletter. We offer webinars. You know, all of that is sub messaging underneath. Why do we exist? That's the broad messaging. So these are used with with key messages, and they should fit underneath the key messaging. They should dovetail. They shouldn't be in disagreement with. They need to kind of, you know, help support the key messaging. They're not too broad, but they're specific to your chapter activity. So there could be a state legislator visit, a chapter meeting, a webinar, or another product that you offer to your chapters.
Yeah. And so where is the dovetail with things like when we rely on, as Matt has described it here, we rely on the peer-to-peer, what has the organization done for me personally and professionally messaging? Because I mean, obviously everybody's got a little bit different,
right?
But that's like teaching a leader or a ambassador rather to add their own story after they've told the larger story.
Right. So let me go back to that physician organization where they were doing the Capitol Hill Day, which could be different than what your organization's doing, but I think it's a good example. We gave them the statistics and the data, right, in the messaging. And we told them, asked them to add their own story about why they go to the lobby day over and over and over again. And we had, like, the founder of the organization, he was just a very well-respected physician. We had him give an example when we did the training. So we told people, add this into your email. We want this to be in your words. We are not going to coach you on what to say about this. This is your story. And so the messaging that we give them is like top tier. It's like, you know, all the why, and then a little bit about the sub messaging, you weave that in. But now the most compelling thing, and this is why I'm stressing this needs to be peer-to-peer, is your story. why are you doing this? What's engaging you about it? Even if it's a brand new program and you're going to say, I am so excited about this. I really think it's going to boost our membership and boost our awareness and really tell people what the profession is about. I mean, we're the best unknown profession in our niche, and now we have an opportunity to tell people about what we do for society and how we help. And, I think it's that kind of thing, which is why, again, it really needs to be peer-to-peer. You lose that when it's not peer-to-peer.
Just a quick thought, Sheri, I just spent time with NIGP. I don't think Jen is on the call here, but large time in our chapter leader conference, a lot of what we talked about was how the profession of government procurement is misunderstood or not even understood to be there. So you're just like ringing all the bells for me.
I did a training yesterday and they literally described themselves as the best profession nobody knows about. I thought that was great. I was like, I wish I would have thought of that. Anyway, then you get it approved by leaders and other stakeholders. But by this time, you've gotten all these people involved and they're excited about the program. So it shouldn't be, oh, I did use that slide, Peggy. You can widely distribute this. You do not need to make this a secret because you're not going to turn anybody away. And whether you have 3 people or 30 people out of a chapter of 60, everybody can be an ambassador. The more the merrier. And you want to encourage the use of these messaging of the ambassadors. I mean, I know when I first did this for an association years ago, I literally was sitting at staff meeting, goes, why don't we use one of our ambassadors for this? We're testifying. It was a healthcare organization again. We're testifying before CDC. Let's use an ambassador. FDA, let's use an ambassador. I mean, we have these people that have been trained on how to relay the information to these very important government bodies. And these are on a national level, but you can easily do this on a local level as well. You have a state legislature, you have other state programs that, could be helpful. And your ambassadors are viewed as like people off the street, right? There's sort of an authentic, genuine perception of a member that the board president or a potential staff person doesn't have. Weave them into all your chapter communications. I mean, if you have an e-newsletter for your chapter, you're probably struggling to come up with like the various pieces to make your newsletter sing and to make it interesting. Have an ambassador write about whatever they want to write about. If what's most important to them is chapter monthly programs, have them talk about why they think chapter monthly programs are important in your e-newsletter. I just think that we don't think about, we launch these programs, and a lot of times I feel that one of the reasons why they're not successful is we have this list of people and we just keep them on a list. We need to engage them in these various activities. And it also makes your workload as a volunteer a little easier if you can spread it out, right? So let's use these volunteers. They volunteer to do stuff. Let's use them to do stuff. So when you're training these chapter people, you want to use a message training expert, somebody who can walk them through how to use these messages, why you're using them. I often find that when I do message training, I just mentioned to Peggy at the beginning of this, I did message training, media training yesterday, that it isn't the messages that people ask questions about. They get that piece of it. It's the why are we doing this? Why do we need to know that? We know about the organization. I don't really understand why we need this. Everyone needs it. And I have gotten in the last couple of years a lot of pushback on media training. I've had media training. I know what it's like. If you don't get it periodically, because the media has changed dramatically, and legislators have changed too, certainly in the last 4 or 5 years. So you need to revisit this message training so that you get people who are talking on the same page. And you can hold it. Sure.
I'm sorry, Sheri, I thought you were changing. Okay. I just wanted to bring up, because there was a great question related. And so I'd love for you to continue on that theme for just a moment. The question was, how do you prepare these individuals to feel confident that they can truly speak and represent for the organization? And the sense was, because it's not their full-time job, they do some training, but it's not sticking, or at least it's not developing the confidence. Can you just talk a little bit more? Because I think, your point that you've just made is so important.
Okay. So first of all, I'm not sure, we don't really need to hold their hand. I call this hand holding. We don't really need to hold people's hands if they're like writing an newsletter, because you can go back and forth with that, or posting something on social media that you've approved, that kind of thing. However, if they're talking to a state legislature or they're doing the media interview, that's where you get into like, oh, I've never done a media interview before, I don't know what I'm saying, blah, blah, blah. Someone else needs to step up. Maybe it's a board chair, maybe you have a communications committee or something. That person who's chair of that committee or the board president needs to step up, give them some talking points. I often feel that I've been doing this for decades for a living, mostly PR. I often feel that when people have talking points in front of them, it boosts their confidence tremendously. And because so many of these interviews now are done by phone or Zoom, we see it like on CNN or Fox. They're not using in-person interviews anymore. They started using Zoom during COVID, and people are continuing to use Zoom even for major interviews with major experts, major national experts. So a lot of these will be by phone or Zoom. You can have your notes right in front of you. And I encourage everyone to do that, because even if you just know that you have them, I'll tell you a really funny story. The first time I ever spoke at ASAE Annual, I had notes in my hand and I was shaking so badly, you could hear the paper rattling in my hand. So I had to put it on a table that was sitting in front of me. And I literally started, and I was so nervous. I stopped myself and I said, I am so nervous. I had to put this piece of paper down, my cheat sheet, because, and the audience kind of broke up, laughed with me. And I went on and I was fine. It's just those initial nerves. So these mock interviews that you would have, whether you're testifying before a state legislator or you're talking to a journalist or whatever's going on, that really helps, because you walk them through the questions. You're anticipating questions that they may have. And I think it's really helpful. Did that answer the question?
I think so. I like the idea of the mock, but I also like the idea of reminding us that it's okay for us to give them talking points to kind of help them. Let me just ask one follow-up question, which is, let's say we've got somebody who's representing at the chapter level. Do you ever do any kind of, or recommend that organizations do any kind of let's do a debrief and help you get even stronger?
Oh yeah. I mean, that's always helpful. However, in a lot of places, like journalists, they don't want a third person on. So it's really hard. Right. So that's really hard. But if you're doing like a presentation for another group or a state legislator, there may be other people in the audience, and that is helpful. Or they might come back to you and say, that's happened too to me. They'll come back to me and say, oh, I really messed up. I said this, I should have said that. I also want to make a point that I did make yesterday in this media training, and I'll tell a little short anecdote, and then I want to move on because I want to get towards the end of this so we can get through it, and then I'll take your Q&A at that point. But you can control the interview. If someone's asking you questions that you don't know, and that you set a boundary and you said, I know that you probably want to also talk about this, and it's a crisis issue in our industry, I don't want to talk about that. And you set that boundary, and that person, whether it's a reporter or state legislator, they keep asking over and over again about that issue that you've agreed not to talk about. There is nothing wrong with you saying, thank you so much for your time, and I'm more than happy to answer anything else by email, but we agreed upon these boundaries and you've violated them 3 times now, and I'm gonna have to end the interview. You are not beholden to them. They are just as beholden to you as you are to them. And if you don't know the answer to an interview, say, I don't know. That's a great question. Gosh, I don't know the answer to that. Don't fake it, because that will really ruin your credibility. Say, I don't know, and what's your deadline, and I'll get back to you, when I can. Even in a state legislature, if you're testifying in front of people, same thing. Or in a presentation, please come up to me and give me your email so I can get that answer back to you as quickly as possible once I do my research. You're not God. You don't know everything. You don't know everything there is to know in the universe. And sometimes questions come out of left field and you didn't anticipate them. It's okay to say that. That's just honest and authentic, and makes you look honest and authentic. So we want to hold that chapter training by video conference. That way, I know I live in Virginia, and the Virginia Society of Association Executives, it really spans like 200, 300 miles across the state. And people are always complaining that they can't get to the training. But if you hold it by video, there's no issue. And you want to include this in a chapter ambassador toolkit. And I'm happy to share with you an outline. On this toolkit, when I did this on a national basis, I had 125 requests for an outline for the ambassador toolkit. I had done this toolkit for a client, so I had to go back to my client and make sure it was okay for them. You know, I took out obviously all their information, but to make sure it was okay for them. So how do you launch it? I'm going to skip this just you create that ambassador toolkit, and that is going to have your messages in it. So all of the people that are your ambassadors, when you onboard them, you give them that tool, you kind of walk them through it a little bit and explain to them what's in the toolkit. And the toolkit is long, but what I've done is, first of all, we put it online. And second of all, we make everything really short. And then if they want more additional information, they can ask the chapter president or the communications chairperson or whatever. But it really gives them all the tools that they would need to be able to do this ambassador piece as well as can be expected. There are other things that come up during the year where you need other sub messaging or other, I'm not talking about that, but the ambassador toolkit has the premier things that they need. And it's everything from like a button that says, I'm a chapter ABC chapter ambassador, ask me how you can join, to signing their emails with, I'm an ABC chapter ambassador, you know, ask me about the program or something like that. And that's those are ambassadors. I'm not going to take that away from them. They might not be the people that you put in front of a journalist or in front of a state legislature or speaking in another organization, but they're ambassadors nonetheless. And when you go to explain the ambassador program, I really want you to think about the why. And, you know, why do we do this? We want members. Okay, well, that's here. We want to take it up way up here. You can't even see my hand. We want to take it up to a strategic level. Why do you exist? What is the purpose of your organization? And then discuss the benefits of the program for chapter members. It's going to enhance your leadership skills. It could help you in your next job. It's going to connect you with members of our community in a way that you haven't been connected before. There's a ripple effect for you. Fit the chapter member with the activity. I think we've talked about that. I think that's really, really important. And you could do something, as I mentioned before, as simple as a chapter email signature or a chapter social media post, or writing a blurb for a chapter newsletter, or authoring a chapter blog or a guest blog for another organization. You could draft testimony and have that person delivering testimony. Create a chapter video. I chose this picture specifically because we think of video. I just saw something on LinkedIn today where a gentleman was saying, I hired a producer and I was going on and on about having these professionally produced videos. There is something to be said where for somebody with an iPhone or a Samsung with a good camera, they all have good cameras now, just ad hoc, you know, why are you a member? What's important to you? Why are you part of the ambassador program? These videos on, you know, to share with other members, especially on social media, they get great pickup and they look totally authentic. And I chose this one because it doesn't look professionally produced. And I think that's something that you might want on a chapter level. Participating in a state legislative day, you can represent your chapter at a related meeting, or speaking at a chapter related organization, or responding to a local media inquiry. These are all activities that an ambassador could do. Anybody can think of any other activities that a chapter ambassador could do for your specific organization? Anything we left out? No, we covered it. Okay, so
Mentoring.
Measuring, yeah.
Mentoring.
Oh, mentoring, yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, I'm surprised I didn't think of that myself since I just joined ASAE's mentoring program. I have some case studies, but I think I mentioned them, and I'm gonna kind of go to the takeaways because I want to have a couple minutes for Q&A. So everybody is a chapter ambassador. Develop your chapter verbal brand and then create your chapter messages and train your ambassadors. Have a chapter toolkit with content that focuses on your chapter, and focus on your chapter member engagement and the value proposition. And then what are the benefits to your chapter members? And overall, the ambassador program helps ensure your chapter brand consistency. So all of that said, I'm going to open it up for any Q&As that you might have. And thank you all for being here today. I know we're getting close to the end of the hour, and we did stop a few times to answer a couple questions. If anybody has any additional questions after we hang up, feel free to email me. Happy to answer.
Great. I mean, I think there are a couple of here. I think the one that we haven't really maybe gotten into, and if we're going to sell this, how do we measure the success of this kind of a program or endeavor? And how do we measure the success of this kind of program?
Okay, so first of all, engaged members is one way to measure it. If you have 10 people that are ambassadors, those are people who are pretty engaged. And you can, and maybe a couple of them weren't engaged before. Maybe they came from your committee ranks and not your leadership. So that's one. Number two, I would, as a Marcom person, count the products that the ambassadors were responsible for. So in other words, we had ambassadors write 3 articles for our newsletter. We had 2 ambassadors go on podcasts. We had 2 write blogs. We had 10 posts on social media. So it's showing the product count, even though, maybe on social media, you can get some Google Analytics on it, even though the other things aren't really, numbers per se, it's a way of counting and a way of showing more engagement in the community. And then finally, if you're able to get rising stars out of it and you're able to identify that into your chapter leadership, I think that's a success measurement. And finally, new members. The goal really of this is to broaden your organization and broaden the awareness of your organization through this program. So if your chapter has been stagnant with membership and all of a sudden you launch this program and the next year you got 5 new members and you didn't have those 5 new members in the previous 2 or 3 years, maybe you had 1, maybe a couple drop out, a couple joined, so it kind of stayed stagnant. You get 5 new members or 10 new members or 20 new members, that to me would be a showing of growth.
Great. I love that. I love that. And I know that we're at the answer. We've got a couple of people saying they have to hop off, but is there anything else in the chat that folks want to make sure that we connect to? I will mention, Sheri, that one of the conversations and a couple of us were going back, it started with I'm having a hard time figuring out the difference between recruitment tools versus ambassador tools. I came back with a response that said the ambassador tools are really largely about the bigger message, and they can help you how to create sub messages, but that the toolkit would also include elements to help you recruit new ambassadors. So it's a little bit because I'm an ambassador, talk to me. So can you glean anything more to make sure people understand? Someone else said, they view the ambassadors as their champions.
Yeah, 100%. So the recruitment tool is really, it's really set aside for launching the program and continuing it down the road. But when I was talking about recruitment, how do you start the process? I was talking about the launch of the first program, not the ongoing program. So I view that as that's your leadership. You start asking your board, who can you recommend who could be an ambassador? And then they recommend, and then they go and ask those people. And then it follows down the road. So the more ambassadors you have, the more the program can grow, because every year you're going to ask them, come up with 2 people you can reach out to individually and ask to be ambassadors. Okay. Right. So that's the recruitment process.
Excellent.
The toolkit tells people what they need to know to be an ambassador, to serve as an ambassador. It includes activities that they could do, messaging that they should use. All of that is part of the toolkit. So once you're an ambassador, you get a copy of the toolkit. It's kind of like a membership onboarding piece.
Excellent. Great. Thank you. So many great questions. In our email that goes out, we will have the link to the template, the toolkit that she mentioned. So worry not. And then please remember that if you've got any questions for her, we'll get the chat and they get the recording, get the slides to you. And then part of that will have Sheri's information. But in the meantime, you can, of course, see her right here, Sheri at singercom.com. We'll get you to her in the meantime. Thank you, Sheri.
Thank you guys.
Like oodles of love and great wishes to you. Super appreciate you being here to help us with this. Y'all have a great day. Use that extra day this month to do something fun, at least part of the day. And we'll see you next month where we're talking about getting past volunteer burnout. It's been
Thank
great.
you all.
Thank you.